But at the same time, from astrology, I learned that there are three broad categories of people.
Yeah.
I mean, what we call the fixed sign, the cardinal sign, and the mutable signs.
Yes.
So, do you want to explain a bit? Because I feel that once I learn astrology, right, I start to realize some of my students they are more cardinal, and
Mm,
some are more like fixed, and the differences show.
mm.
So I'm just thinking how maybe you can explain to people, what these mean, and the learning styles, and how I should approach these students as a singing teacher.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Well, I mean, you actually mentioned a couple of things there. So I thought I just sort of jump in here, right? You mentioned about how the amount of work
Mm,
that is being taken, that goes into things. It's like, if you think about it, that applies to everything. It's like you want to be a scientist, you want to be an engineer. You know that when an engineer goes out there and explains something in very plain, simple terms, just so you know that person's had like 10 plus 20 years of experience in engineering.
mm,
And in school and all those hours that they spend with their mentors and whatever, it's like nobody goes on stage and becomes an engineering genius in 3 minutes. It doesn't
mm,
happen. And with
mm,
every singer who goes out there and belts out a 3 minute song, that's 10 years of work, right? So
mm,
it's like and there is a proverb in Mandarin that goes like this. So it's 台上3分钟,
mm,
台下10年功, which means 3 minutes on stage comes about with 10 years of hard work.
mm,
So
mm.
that applies to singing, it applies to astrology. You know, people want to see, like, you know, it's almost like magic. Someone reads your chart and it's accurate just so you know it's 20 years. Like, it took me 20 years to get there, right? So it's like and I think it's a very dangerous thing also, because now we have this is a world of instant. You go
Yeah,
chat GPT, you type
yeah.
something, press enter, you get your answer, right? So
And
it's
young people these days, if
mm,
they think I mean, if they have healthy self-esteem, they just put their stuff online and they think they are very good. And I keep
yes.
thinking, oh, they're missing out on so many things that they don't
Yeah.
know about.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's like and I think it's about the expectation of when you're going to get a reward. So basically, and it's one of the reasons that there are cases of people who, like, you know, you kind of newly joined a company, you've been there for 6 months, and then you are asking, why am I not promoted yet? You know? So
Mm,
it's a and that's a common thing, which I thought I wanted to sort of come in here, because
mm,
I think for a lot of things people accept that it takes years. So you accept that it takes years to qualify a doctor. You accept that it
mm,
takes years to qualify a lawyer, but
mm.
there's something about certain professions, like singing, for example, performing,
I
like
know.
like astrology, for example, that people expect to be a professional. Like, you know, they
Yeah,
come for two
yeah.
lessons and they're like, why am I not, like, you know, not singing like a pro? Why am I not golfing like Tiger Woods, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think it's important that the teachers need to set, especially in a conversation like what we're having here, the teachers need to set a realistic expectation of where people can get. And I think there's a sense of, I know you want to learn a lot of things, but there's also a limit to how much somebody can absorb within a limited period of time.
And there's a due process. Like you got to learn this
Yes.
before you learn that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, in the olden days, you join like the Shaolin monastery, right? You know how the person is basically sweeping floor for like 2 years before you even learn anything. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a lot of these traditional skills that have been very entrenched and they've been there for thousands and thousands of years.
Mm,
You got the sashimi chef, right? You know how
mm.
you chop vegetables for like 4 years before they even let you touch the knife. Yeah, but you know there is a reason why that skill is still around after thousands of years.
Yeah.
And then there are, like, you know, TikTokers who come and go, right? You're hot today and you're gone tomorrow, right?
Mm.
One day you're in and next day you're out, right? To quote Heidi Klum. So the thing is, like, I mean, if you want that longevity, the foundation is so important. I just wanted to say that because, you know, something you said there, like, that the
I
trigger
know.
is there for every teacher who has put in the 10, 20 years into their craft.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
interestingly, there was one day I was so bored. So because there's a saying, right? If you want to master a skill, it takes 10,000 hours. Then I
Yes.
went to calculate.
Yes,
I was
exactly how
calculating,
long
okay,
10,000
so
hours
if
is,
I
right?
practice singing 3 hours a day,
Mm,
so 10,000 hours divided by three, how many days? It came up
mm.
to, I think, roughly about 13 years. And I was shocked. I was like, like, I,
Yeah.
to say this to anyone, it feels very demoralizing, because it's like, do I want to spend 13 years on this?
And do I get any guarantee that I'm going to make it?
Yeah,
Because 13
yeah.
years is such a huge cost, isn't
It's
it?
like, my youth, like the
Yeah.
amount of money, the amount of time, the effort. Will I
But if
get
you turn it around, if you don't spend that 13 years, you're guaranteed to not make it.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is a base point that we have to put in place, because I suspect that you are going your questions will go deeper and deeper into like the meaning and purpose thing, right? Which
Mm,
is which comes right back to this thing about the very high cost that somebody pays to be a master
mm,
in the thing that they want to do. And that's why meaning and purpose, which I suspect you will get there later lah. But
mm,
I think when it comes down to the 13 years, right?
mm,
It's like I think at the beginning it feels like a very long process.
mm,
But it really does take the 13 years. And I get astrology students who ask me, May, how long do I have to practice astrology to know that I'm good? Because
mm.
you are my student too, and you studied this for about a couple of years, right? And you know how even after 2 years, it's like when
Mm.
you get faced with a new chart, you're still like, okay, wait, I need to know what is the keyword for Gemini,
Yeah, I need to check
right?
your book. I need to make
Yeah,
sure.
you still need the book, and it's like, okay, wait,
No,
12th
but
house,
I'm
what's
not
the
too
12th house
sure. Like I
keyword,
better
right?
make sure kind of feeling. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So you know what I'm talking about, right? So there's still that moment of, okay, wait, I need to break this down like step by step, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but what my students want to know is, at what point do I get to the level, right? When I look at the chart, it's like, whoa, I can tell you story instantly, right? And my answer to them is, when you get to your 500th chart, you might get a chance of being there. And you know what I mean. So you see, you've
Yeah.
been studying this for 2 years, and it's
Mm.
like 500 charts sounds like, oh my God, like how am I going to get 500 charts, right? And so it sounds like a lot of work, because it takes a lot of work to read the chart, which my students know. But the
Yeah.
thing is, but it makes sense to Bevlyn that when you do 500 charts now, that's when you read automatically, because
Mm.
you know why, you've referred to that book so many thousand times until
Yeah.
it's ingrained in your mind. It's like,
The
it's,
information is deposited somewhere, then you can just retrieve
yeah.
automatically. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So it's like there's that resonance with a language that only comes when you refer to that book 1,000 times, until you get to the point where you don't need the book already. In fact, you can write the book already. You know
Mm,
what I mean? So
mm.
it takes 500 charts. And it probably takes like singing 500 songs to get anywhere near.
Yes. Yes.
Right. This is something you agree with. Like, you don't sing 500 times. How
Mhm.
are you going to get anywhere that resonance with your voice?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always tell my students, you don't have to sing the song 100 times, but because if you don't get the techniques right, then you're just wasting time.
Oh,
You can
yes.
make sure, you do the singing with techniques 100 times,
Yes.
then, it gets automated. Then, you can transfer that to other songs or whatever, right? It's the same techniques over and over again. Yeah. Mm,
But you mentioned about the cardinal fixed mutable thing, right?
yes, yes.
And yeah, I thought that maybe I can just add something on to that. So for the people who are not familiar, so astrology has 12 signs. So
Mm,
everything from Aries to Pisces, right? So you're probably familiar with the 12 signs, but they're actually divided into three categories. So some of the signs are what we call cardinal. So those are the Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, and then there's the fixed. There's another four signs that belong in the fixed category, and another four signs that belong in the mutable category. So
mm,
depending on what is the balance, so basically every single person is a mix of like a bunch of signs, lah, right? So you have not just, so if you're Aries, for example, you're not just Aries, just so you know, you have a lot of like other signs in your chart. But
mm,
what I teach my students is to figure out what is the balance. So some people are like very, very cardinal, and then they are very, very immutable. And some people are quite like evenly balanced among the three. So once you've had an astrologer go through your chart, they will tell you if you are like a fixed dominant, which means you have more fixed than other types. So what Beverly is referring to is that when if you want to assess a singing student, for example, and if you have their chart, a teacher would be able to tell if somebody is a cardinal personality or otherwise. That.
mm,
Yeah. So is there a difference in the approach and how they do things? Well, definitely yes. But I think it's maybe potentially it is not so much in the actual singing skill itself, but I think rather in, say, in the context of pursuing singing as a career or even as a side hustle. I think those what we call the modes, the three modes, tend to play out more in terms of how they go about doing it. So, for example, cardinal people are more go-getters. So these are
mm,
the people who are more likely to create their own opportunities. So
mm,
basically, they don't wait for somebody to headhunt them. So these are the people who might feel a bit more motivated to record themselves and then post it on TikTok, and even to record demo tapes or actively go and join competitions to basically because I'm a cardinal person myself, so I can be a bit more evil to cardinal people because I'm the same, right? Basically, you just want to shove yourself into people's faces, and it's like, give me an opportunity. I want it now. So there's something very like a bit more aggressive lah, generally speaking,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
they
A
want
go-getter kind of energy, right?
go getter. Go
Yeah.
getter. Like I make them sound like terrible people, but actually, to a large extent, that is there an advantage? Yes, of course, because then you don't sit around waiting for people to call you or WhatsApp you, right? So then
Mm.
you are basically emailing all these recording studios, emailing like people like what Bevlyn used to be when she had her agency, right? Basically to say, can I sing for you? Can I audition? I'd like a chance,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Right, so they are the ones who they're a bit more thick skin in the sense that at most I email 10 people, maybe 9 will ignore me, but maybe 1 will give me a chance, right? So
Mm.
that the go-getter spirit is useful in a very cutthroat industry where I think opportunities, especially in a country like Singapore, is not so widespread,
Mm.
right? So you don't get there are a few big players, and then there aren't. It's not like everywhere you turn, there's people doing music. Not in this country lah, right? So
Mhm.
the go-getter thing is a bit more useful. That's true.
Mhm.
Is there a downside? Of course lah. So then these people tend to be a bit they tend to jump the gun. So sometimes if they are like not so good, right? And then maybe you posted like 5 TikTok videos, then you expect to be Carrie Underwood lah, you know? Then
Yes.
so that one can be a bit sometimes young upstart lah, if you know what I mean, right? So that's
So
like
I
not very good. Then you want to be like sort of like a Grammy Award winner. You want to be Rihanna instantly. Doesn't work that way lah.
so because after I learned astrology, I learned about all these. I realized that there are some students, they really, I tell them, okay, you are serious about becoming a singer. Okay, now it's so accessible. You don't need to wait for record labels to come and sign you, discover you. Just post yourself on TikTok. And then the people who are more driven, they will do it. But then after a while, right, you start to see they stop doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically
Nobody likes
the
the
staying
video.
power is not there.
Yeah.
This is absolutely true because I'm cardinal dominant. So it's like I tend to start something and then my staying power also not the best. Yeah, I'm guilty of it myself. Yeah, which is why then for the cardinal people, I would say what works is that you have short bursts of action. So for example, if there's a performance that you are gunning for, and that performance is in 2 or 3 months' time. So then that person can be motivated to put everything into that performance. So then they will do really well. At the end of it, they get their, get their applause, thank you, thank you. And then it finishes until they feel motivated to do another show. Then they can, wow, go getter again. But if you expect them to, for example, go to a pub and then sing every Friday night for the next 15 years, right? Their staying power not there when they get very bored. And then after maybe at most like a year, sometimes even 6 months, then they start looking at other things really. Because they need new things all the time. Yeah, so that's actually
Oh.
quite useful. And if you think of there are famous singers who are very good at working on albums. So then it's the same concept, right? So they'll pour everything into an album. Then they might disappear for a while. And then after that, they decide, okay, let's go for another album. Then they gather their people, go to the studio, and then they work on a new album. So that is I think it's about understanding what is your style, what is your pattern, your kwan, right? So then you sort of design the way you go about your career in the way that aligns with the person that you are. Yep.
Mm.
So the fixed person is a different type of personality. As you can tell, the English word fix simply means that they tend to stick with one formula and to keep it going. So these people are the ones with the staying power.
Mm.
Of course, the downside is that they are not as go-getter about getting opportunities than the cardinal people. But these people work a lot better if it's say, I'm sure you've heard of famous singers who start out like in a pub or something, right? So
Mm.
then they basically get one opportunity, they sing in a pub, but they kept up a consistent quality over the years. So
Mm.
in that sense, there are also, there are singers in the world right now who have been singing for literally decades. People like Celine Dion started when she was a teenager. She's still singing now in Las Vegas. So it's
Yes.
like,
Oh,
and
yes. Oh my goodness.
right,
I
and
can
the
imagine
quality
singing
is there.
every night or like so
Yes.
consistently for 5 years, 3 years. Like,
Yes. Yes. Exactly, right? And you know, she's done that show for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do the same set. And you know, if you're someone like Celine Dion, let's be real here, okay? You spend a four-figure thing to have dinner and then listen to her sing, right? Look,
Yeah.
let's be real here. You want to hear My Heart Will Go On, right? You want to hear what
Yes.
Power of Love, right? You know, she sing the same bloody thing every night. You know what I mean or not? So it's like,
Yeah.
but if you think about it, there is a professionalism in it. So you understand that this is what the audience is paying for, and this is what you build your fame on. The truth is, you do that. And a lot of these people, like Rolling Stones, even if you don't pick someone as classic as
Mm,
Celine Dion, the Rolling Stones, a lot of them die already, but a few of them die already. But the point is that they are still going. And
mm,
people like the Beach Boys and a few other people who are still performing here and there, the truth is the old fans want to hear the same thing over and over
yeah.
and over again. But you know, there's professionalism, and there are people who are successful because they maintain the same level of standard, no matter how many times they sung it that week. This is
But
professionalism.
talking back about the Celine Dion Las Vegas show, I
Mm.
think is, some people may say, oh, because she's receiving so much money, of course she will sing it. If it's me, I'll also sing it day in, day out. But I'm like, no, I don't think it's the money.
Okay, let's be real here, okay? She doesn't need the money now.
It's the
Yeah,
the
she really doesn't need it. I can
can
tell
do
you
it.
that. Her royalties from just My Heart Will Go On alone, right? Enough for the next three
Yeah,
generation already. She don't need
yeah,
the money.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and not to mention she got a lot of other hits too, you know, and she's not
Mm-mm.
a one-hit wonder. She's got what 20, 30 hits easily, you know. So it's like one song alone enough for three generations. She's not doing it for the money, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
And you know, she got sick. She got sick and she lost her voice.
yes,
She was battling a serious illness, and you know, she's back on stage. It's
yes,
like,
yes, yes, yeah.
you know, that there's
Ah,
something about how, and she was very clear that I need to do this because that's what Celine Dion does.
mm,
If I don't sing, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. She said
mm,
that in a quite a famous video. She said,
mm,
she told her audience, I will do everything to get back to what I have been doing. Right. And she
mm,
did, you know.
mm,
And then,
mm,
so basically you have the people who are the fixed people. And because I'm so familiar with musical theatre. And you
mm.
know how if you go on London's West End, if you go to New York on Broadway, some of the famous shows, they go on for years and years and years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tell you another thing that I do know because I used to be musical theatre. Sometimes there's an afternoon show and there's
Mm.
a night show.
I
And
cannot
just so you
imagine
know,
doing this. I
yes.
cannot. I
And if
can't.
you've ever seen a musical, each one of those major productions, it runs for 2 to 3 hours each time. And if you are the lead singer, you basically sing for almost the entire musical from beginning to end with multiple costume changes and stunts and dancing and all that stuff. And they do it twice a day for 5 years in a row with one off day per week.
Mm,
You know what I
mm,
mean? And on that one off day when your understudy shows up, everybody complains because they want to see you. They paid money and they want to see the star. So when they kena the understudy, then they all can't pay, right? You know, so the point is that the fixed person, there's something about people like that. And that's what they want, is the stability, and they get this mastery. They play this role so well and they
mm,
do it for years and years and years.
mm,
Consistency is that thing. And then you get the mutable people. So the mutable people are more adaptable. So that means they are not necessarily the go-getters, and they don't always want to sing the same thing. So if you
mm,
think about how there are some performers, even singers, who they don't just sing. So basically they sometimes drift a bit into acting, and some of them are
mm,
dancers too. And some singers make their mark doing covers, for example. So that means, and they do things like they go on movies, for example, and then they play characters who sing songs, and sometimes they end up singing things like Mamma Mia, or they end up doing various types of like song and dance sort of thing. If you're in very entertainment shows, like, you know, like in the style of the Saturday Night Live sort of thing, where you might sing different things. Some people do parodies and that kind of stuff. So there's a adaptability. So they don't want to be Celine Dion because to them that's very boring. Like keep singing the same 20 songs for like 35 years, right? So
yeah, yeah.
they don't want to do that. So in fact, what they want is a variety. So they
Mm,
don't mind doing traveling shows. And then when they're sick of that, then they will just change and do a TV show. And then sometimes they feel like doing a 2 month stint in a pub, and hello everybody, I'm doing a 2 month stint. Come catch me at this place. So there's this changeability. So sometimes when they see already, they might decide to be a teacher for a while. So
oh
it's like,
yeah.
so the mutable people don't want to do Celine Dion. And they are not the pushy kind of person. So Taylor Swift, for example, is the pushy type. So
Mm,
she's the cardinal type, which is why she's done a lot of shoving herself into the face of like many record companies, and Taylor Swift does things on her terms. So
mm,
it's like if she starts something, I can tell you she's the one who started it, right? So she doesn't follow like other people's instructions. She's the one giving instructions. So it's like which is why I think so. To sum up, I don't think that the cardinal fixed mutable thing tells you about the style of singing, but it's a
mm.
style of going about building a career in music.
And I think that's important because I think some people may feel like, oh, I'm not go-getter enough, and but then there's other things for you to do that you can really thrive and feel happy about. And I think it also affects the learning style. I feel that my fixed, or I mean, of course, I don't read their birth charts, but what I mean is I can feel the energies because if I know for a fact that the people who really practice and they're very consistent, I see them 1 week apart. I can hear the difference, because I know they practiced. So the very consistent, fixed sign, they will actually really go and practice. But the more cardinal people, maybe they will like, wow, be very excited after my lesson, right? But then they may not practice, or they may not practice throughout the semester.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and okay, maybe okay, it sounds like a consult now, but I'm just wondering from the singing teacher's point of view,
yeah.
how would you suggest I manage this kind of different styles of learning, uh, mode? Like, what would you suggest?
Well, I mean, if you have like cardinal people, for example, as I sort of suggested just now, right? They work really, really hard when there's something to work for.
Mm,
So you have to give them like there's an end goal. There's something that we want to get at, right? So which means if there's a show, they will practice. If there's a date that's already been
ah,
set in a recording studio and they had to pay like $2,000 to book the studio for a day or whatever, right? Let me tell you, they will practice. Right, because then they don't want to go into the recording studio and then produce some garbly stuff, right? So the thing is, you want to sound good on that recording. I think you should work hard, and trust me, they will, right? So
that's so true. Because I think when I have my students recital, suddenly a lot of people will show up. They'll sign up
yes,
for
and
lessons
they
and
will
then they will
practice.
just practice consistently.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so
So
these are
the
the
cardinal
cardinal people.
people, they need a war to win, basically, right?
Mm,
So that's how you motivate them. Now the fixed people are the ones who are happy to maintain like
yeah.
a mastery. Right. So then for those people, depending on, of course, I'm not in the industry anymore, but I suppose at some point a person might be good enough to potentially try to get themselves a gig of some sort. So
Mm,
in Singapore, the easiest way probably is that there are some music venues where they do need singers on a like fairly regular
regular
basis.
basis, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose if you sing at night, it's even technically possible for someone to have a full-time job and still sing at
Mm,
pubs.
mm, mm,
Right.
mm,
So when I used to be active in musical theatre, I did know some of the practitioners who actually had full-time jobs. But
mm,
then because they perform on weekends and evenings, it's technically possible to do both. Right. So
mm,
you don't have to quit your job to do it. Unless you're confident that you want to commit to it, then by all means, lah. Right.
mm,
But I think it's possible. I've seen people do it. And then,
mm,
of course, then the mutable people is more like, I think, then the teacher needs to know that they need variety lah. So then, of course, if they have to sing the same song 10 times, then you see the attention is not really there already. Yeah. So
yeah.
sometimes it might be good to have like maybe my suggestion would be say a mini repertoire of music that's sort of like interchangeable. Yeah.
Mm.
So that might, spice things up a bit, maybe. Yeah.
I think this is very good information, not just for me, but for my students watching, because they may get an inkling of like, oh, I think I'm that kind of person, and they may go and find their own competitions, to join, to spur themselves on, or, to try to find some gig opportunities for continuity. Yeah, I think that's very helpful. Why is it that other people are so confident on stage, but I'm like so awkward and I don't dare to sing? Is it visible on the birth chart? And how would you encourage people to transform themselves